everyone, it's Amanda from Loops and Love Crochet here, and today I have a video tutorial for you on working up the peekaboo ear warmer. You can find this ear warmer pattern on the blog. It includes 4 sizes. You'll find a toddler size, a child size, a teen size, and an adult size. And if you're familiar with the peekaboo beanie, that's also on the blog. This ear warmer is made with the same stitches as the peekaboo beanie, but instead it's made into an ear warmer. So currently in the peekaboo series, there is a peekaboo beanie, a peekaboo messy bun beanie, and also the ear warmer. So you can check out this free pattern on my blog, loopsandlovecrochet.com, and this video tutorial is meant to show you the stitches in the ear warmer, show you how to work those up, but also to go along with the written pattern. So be sure to check out the written pattern on the blog too. So to make this pattern here today, you're going to need worsted weight number 4 yarn. So I have a couple colors here. You'll need a main color and an accent color. And you're also going to need a 5mm crochet hook. So you can grab your yarn and your hook and we'll get started. Okay, to start this pattern here today, we're going to be starting with a starting foundation or a foundation single crochet, but you can also start this pattern with a starting chain instead as well. And if you check out the written pattern, you'll see all the details on that. And this video tutorial today, I'm going to make the toddler size of the ear warmer, but all of the sizes work up the same. You'll just need to check out the written pattern for the stitch numbers, so for the stitch counts, and for also how long your starting chain or foundation should be for each size that you're making. So to start, I'm just going to make a slip knot with my yarn and place that on my hook. And to start the foundation single crochet, we're going to start with a chain of 2. So 1, 2. And then we're going to work our first foundation single crochet stitch by working in the farthest stitch from my hook here. So the first chain that I made, the one right beside the slip knot, I'm going to insert my hook into that chain. I'm going to yarn over and I'm going to pull up a loop here. So now there's 2 loops on my hook. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to yarn over and pull through only one of those loops on my hook. And then I'm going to yarn over again and pull through 2 loops. So that's our first foundation single crochet stitch. When we're pulling through the 1 loop, that's what's making our chain. And then when we pull through the 2 loops, that's what's making the single crochet. So when you make a foundation single crochet, it's like you're working the chain and the row of single crochet at the same time, instead of doing them separately by chaining and then working a single crochet in each stitch. So you can do either for this pattern, a foundation single crochet or a starting chain. The reason why I'm starting with a foundation single crochet instead is because I can crochet both those rows at the same time, and also it gives kind of a nice finished edge too. So now for our second foundation single crochet stitch, we're going to go back and insert our hook underneath the 2 loops here at the top of the chain of the foundation single crochet here. So we're going to insert our hook right underneath, making sure to pass under both loops. And then we're going to yarn over and pull up a loop. And then again, we'll yarn over, pull through 1 loop, creating the chain. And then a yarn over, pulling through 2 loops to create the single crochet. So going back again, we'll insert our hook back where we pulled through that 1 loop here. There's 2 loops at the top of the chain here. We're going to insert our hook underneath those 2 loops there, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 1 loop, and then yarn over, pull through 2. So we're just going to continue on making our foundation single crochet. So I'll just make a few more of those stitches and I'll show you what that looks like. And you don't want to work your foundation single crochet too tightly, because you do want to be able to get into the stitches, as well as you want to make sure that your ear warmer has a good amount of stretch too to fit around the head of the person that you're making it for. If you work your foundation single crochet with very tight tension, you'll have trouble having a lot of stretch to your ear warmer too. And that's the same as if you work a foundation single crochet or if you work a starting chain. You just want to keep your tension consistent and not work it too tightly. So here's a bunch of our foundation single crochet stitches here. And it actually goes this way when you're done. So I'm just going to pull my hook out. Goes this way when you're done. So the chain part's at the bottom and then the top is the first row of single crochet. So we'll continue going all the way to the number that we need for the toddler size here. And then I'll meet you right back here and then we'll continue on to the next step in the pattern. Okay, here is our foundation single crochet all finished here. You just might want to count it to make sure you have the correct number of stitches for the size that you're making, because it will need to be a multiple of 3 in order for the cluster V stitches to work out. And also, you also might want to check and see, make sure it's a nice stretchy texture here, nice and springy, and it's not worked too tightly. It would also be a good idea to measure it to make sure it is the proper length for the size that you're making. So what we're going to do now is we're going to be changing to our accent color to work the cluster V stitch round. And we're going to do that color change before we join our chain together here. So I'm just going to pull out my last foundation single crochet. And I'm going to work it up again right up until the last yarn over. So here I am with my 2 loops on my hook, and I'm going to make my color change here. So I'm going to place the new color onto my hook and pull through the last part of the foundation single crochet with my accent color here. So there we go, I have the pink yarn on my hook now, and now I'm going to be joining the foundation single crochet row together here. So making sure that we're not twisting it at all, I'm just going to bring it around and find my first stitch here, keeping the right side of my work facing me. And I'm just going to join it to the top of that first foundation single crochet stitch, and I'm going to join it using a slip stitch here. So there we are. And you can also pull these other little ends nice and tight here. You might need to do that a couple times. And you'll notice here that the bottom part of our ear warmer is not joined together. We'll be sewing in these ends after and using them to sew together the bottom part of this ear warmer. Or if you prefer, you can sew it together now too if it bothers you and you want to have it joined together. Now we're going to start our first round of the cluster V stitches. So this is kind of a modified cluster V stitch. It's a little bit different, I learned, than some of the other cluster V stitch out there. This one's a modified cluster V stitch. So how it's going to work is, well, we're going to start with a chain 2, and then we're going to work 2 double crochet, chain 1, and then 2 double crochet all in the same stitch. You can work this modified cluster V stitch, or if you want, you can work the regular cluster V stitch, which is a 2 double crochet cluster, chain 1, and 2 double crochet cluster. It doesn't really make a difference. It might look slightly different, but otherwise it's mostly the same. So we're going to yarn over, and we're going to insert our hook into the first stitch and make our first double crochet stitch. And if you want, you can work over that tail of pink yarn or of your accent color too. But just leave your yarn tail of your main color hanging down, because you're going to need to pull that up later when you change colors again. So I'm going to yarn over, insert my hook into the first stitch, pull up a loop. So now there's 3 loops on my hook. Yarn over, pull through 2 loops, and then yarn over, pull through 2 more loops. So that's my first double crochet. So I'm going to do that again in the same stitch. Pull through 2 loops, pull through 2 loops. There's my first 2 double crochet stitches. I'm going to chain 1, and then I'm going to put 2 more double crochet stitches into the same stitch. So there's 1, 2. So there's our first cluster V stitch. You can see how it has the V in the middle, created by the chain 1 in between those 2 double crochet stitches. And now we're going to skip the next 2 stitches, and then we're going to work 2 double crochet, or the cluster V stitch, in the next one. So skip 2 stitches, yarn over, we're going to do our cluster V stitch in the next one, So there's our second cluster V-stitch, skip 2 stitches, and then we'll work another cluster V-stitch. And just make sure that you're working your cluster V-stitches in the same tension that you worked your starting chain or starting foundation in. And as you work your cluster V-stitches, as you continue on working those, you might notice that they start to, or your ear warmer starts to curl a little bit, but that'll straighten out as we work more rounds and also when it's stretched to fit over a head as well. So I'll just finish up this last cluster V-stitch and I'll show you what this looks like. So there we go, there's our first few cluster V-stitches, and I will continue on working the cluster V-stitches around, and I'll meet you back over here on the other side and I'll show you how to join that and start the next round. Okay, so here is our ear warmer with our first round of cluster V-stitches, and as you can see it's a little bit curly here, but it will stretch out when it's placed around someone's head and when we get more rows here worked up. So now we're going to be joining to the first stitch here, and then we're going to be working our round of single crochet stitches and cross double crochet stitches. So to join here, I'm going to join with a slip stitch to the first double crochet of the round. So I'll just make that slip stitch. And then I'm going to slip stitch over into the next stitch. And then I'm going to make another slip stitch into the center of this first cluster V-stitch. And while I make this slip stitch here, I'm going to be joining in back to my main color. So I'll join and do the slip stitch I'll make the slip stitch and the color change at the same time. So I'm just going to insert my hook. I'll drop the pink yarn, pick up the main color, and pull that through for my slip stitch here. And now I'm going to be working in the center of the the cluster V-stitch here. So I'm going to chain 1, and then I'm going to work a single crochet in the center of this cluster V-stitch, and then I'm going to come down and work cross double crochet stitches in the 2 stitches that I skipped from the previous round here, or all the way back down to my foundation single crochet here. These are the 2 stitches I skipped when I was doing the cluster V-stitches. So we're going to work cross double crochet stitches. So I'm going to yarn over, I'm going to skip the first stitch, and I'm going to go into the second one here, and I'm going to complete a double crochet, but I'm going to complete it in front of the cluster V-stitches. So instead of passing my crochet hook all the way through to the back like you normally would, I'm going to pass it in and out of those double crochet, or the foundation single crochet, and I'm going to be working in front of my cluster V-stitch for my double crochet stitch. So there's my double crochet stitch. It's laying in front of the cluster V-stitch, and then I'm going to yarn over again and complete another double crochet back in the stitch that I skipped here. And again, I'm going to be working in front of the cluster V-stitches, so I'm going to pop my hook out in front of those cluster V-stitches, and I'll complete my double crochet. So there's our first cross double crochet stitch. So I'll show you what that looks like again. So I'm just going to work the single crochet in the cluster V-stitch space, and then I'm going to work in those 2 stitches that I skipped here, back down from my foundation single crochet. And you can see the pink yarn here sticking through. That's just from when I worked over my yarn tail of the accent color there, from when I joined it. So I'll continue working over that so I don't have to weave it in after. So we're going to yarn over, insert our hook into the first stitch or the second stitch. We're going to skip the first one, go into the second one, pass our hook in front of the cluster V-stitches, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then complete your double crochet as you normally would. And then we're going to go back and complete a double crochet in that stitch that we skipped, again working in front of the cluster V-stitches. So as you can see, our cross double crochet stitches are sitting in front of the cluster V-stitches, and those cluster V-stitches are kind of like little peekaboos between these crosses here. So we'll continue on with a single crochet in the next stitch there. And then again, skip the next stitch, double crochet in the following one in front of the cluster V, and then go back and double crochet in the one that we skipped. So there we go. We're just going to continue to work that the whole way around here. And I will finish off this round of the single crochet and cross double crochet off camera here, and I'll meet you back on the other side and I'll show you how to join it and start the next round. Okay, so we're finished our last cross double crochet right up to the last stitch here. So now we're going to join from the last stitch here to the first stitch with a slip stitch. So my first stitch of the round is the first single crochet here, right in the middle of that first cluster V stitch. So I'm going to join to that one and pull my slip stitch nice and tight. And then I'm going to chain one, and this next round we're just going to work single crochet stitches into the top of each stitch around. So it's one single crochet stitch in the top of each single crochet, in the top of each of the double crochet stitches, all the way around until we get to the other side. So I'll finish up this one and then I'll show you the next round, and the next round is going to be our front post single crochet stitches. So those ones are worked a little bit differently, so I'll show you what those look like. Okay, so here is our round of single crochet all finished here. So we're just going to join that last stitch to the first single crochet of the round with a slip stitch. And now we're going to work our round of front post single crochet stitches. So front post single crochet stitches are what create the nice ridge here on the front of your crochet projects. So they don't really add height to the crochet project, but they give a nice texture by placing the single crochet stitches in front of the other single crochet stitches. So we're first going to start with a chain one. And then our first front post single crochet stitch is going to be worked around the post of the first single crochet and each single crochet all the way around. So to do that, we're going to first insert our hook like you normally would into the first stitch. And then you're going to pass around the post of that stitch and back out the next stitch. So you're just kind of working around the front of that single crochet stitch there. You're going to yarn over and pull up a loop. And then you're going to yarn over and pull through two loops just like you would with a regular single crochet. So again, we'll insert our hook into the stitch, pass around the single crochet stitch right around the post here, and then we'll yarn over, pull up a loop, and then yarn over, pull through two loops. And then again, we'll insert our hook into the stitch, pass around the post, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through two loops. So I'll just complete a few of those here. And then I'll show you what those look like. So it's just like completing a regular single crochet stitch. The only difference is you're just entering the stitch differently to place the single crochet stitches on the front of your project instead of on the top of your project. So there's some of the front post single crochet stitches. So you can see they create a ridge in front of the other stitches. So here is our previous round of single crochet, and on the front here is our round of front post single crochet. So we'll continue working those all the way around, and then when we get to the other end here, I'll show you how to join those because you'll join it a little bit differently than the rest of the rounds. So I'll show you what that looks like when we get there, and I'll continue working up these front post single crochet stitches. Okay, so here's our completed round of front post single crochet stitches, and as you can see, they are on the front of our project here, right in front of the previous row of single crochet. So now we're going to join the last front post single crochet to the first one of the round here, and just make sure you went around the last single crochet of the round. Sometimes that last single crochet can be hard to get the front post single crochet in there with your hook, so just make sure you worked up that last front post single crochet. Your stitch count should continue to be the same. And then you're going to join with a slip stitch to the first front post single crochet of the round. So that's the first one right here. So we're just going to join to the first front post single crochet with a slip stitch. And now we're going to need to join back to our round of single crochet, which is behind the front post single crochet, because we don't want to work our next round in the post stitches because then they'll all be on the front of the project. We want to work back in the previous round so that the front post single crochet stitches have that nice ridge on the front still. So what we're going to do to find that first stitch there, it's going to be directly behind this first slip stitch, and you'll see when you look at it closely, you'll see your stitches go this way, and then you'll see one going side to side here, and that's your slip stitch from the previous round. And then right in front of that's going to be your first single crochet from the previous round. So you just need to look and find that one stitch that goes sideways there. And then right beside it is going to be your first single crochet stitch. So we're just going to get our hook right underneath there, underneath the two V's that create that first single crochet of the previous round. And then that's where we're going to join our next slip stitch there. So you got to make sure to get into the right stitch there, because if you ended up going into one of the other ones, it would affect your stitch count too. So just make sure you can keep a consistent stitch count each round as well. So now we're going to chain one, and then again we're going to work a single crochet into each stitch around, making sure we're not working in the post stitches, we're working in the single crochet row behind those post stitches. So the same round that we just did our second slip stitch in, the same stitch here, we're going to work our single crochet stitches. So there's the first one. So we're going to continue all the way around. And you can see that we are working behind the front post single crochet stitches, which are creating a nice ridge there. And we'll just continue like that the whole way around until we get to the other side, and then I'll show you how to work the color change and our next round of the cluster V stitches. Okay, so here is that round of single crochet finished, right in behind of the front post single crochet stitches. So now we're just going to be getting back to the repeat part of this pattern here. I'm just going to show you, we're going to be changing color back to the accent color to do our next round of cluster V stitches. So I'm just going to work that last single crochet stitch again to show you. So we're going to work our single crochet right up to the last yarn over, and then we're going to drop that yarn, pull up the accent color again, and pull that through, finishing our single crochet. And then we're going to join to the top of the first single crochet with a slip stitch. And then from here, we're going to go back to chaining two and completing our cluster V stitch round again. So our 2 double crochet, chain one, and then 2 double crochet all in the same stitch. And we're going to complete that all the way around. And this is where we just kind of repeat the whole way up here. We'll do our round of cluster V stitches, and then we'll do our round of single crochet with crossed double crochet stitches in between, a round of single crochet, and then a round of front post single crochet, and then we'll go back to single crochet again. And depending on which size of ear warmer you're making, you'll maybe change how many repeats you do. For the toddler size, I think we're just going to do 2. And then for the child or teen or adult size, we do 3 repeats to get the 3 rows here. So you can continue on the whole rest of the way up the same way that we worked the whole bottom part. And I will show you when we get to the end, and then we'll work the gathering part in the middle. Okay, so now I've worked up another section of the cluster V stitches, the cross double crochet with the single crochet in between the cluster V stitch, and just a single crochet round at the top here. And because I'm making the toddler size, this is as tall as the toddler size that I'm making is going to be. However, if you're making the child size or a larger size, you'll be adding on another section of the cluster V stitches and the cross double crochet stitches and single crochet at the top there. So now what we're going to do is we're going to sew in this end here, connecting the bottom of the ear warmer, and then we're going to gather the middle here, and then we'll add the little chain around the middle. So I have my yarn fed through my yarn needle here for this, right here where this tail is, where we started off with our starting chain or our foundation. And I'm just going to weave that in, pulling it over so we can't really see where that spot is, where we started. So I'm just going to secure that yarn tail by running it under some of the stitches and then coming back again. And you can also tie it off on the inside if you'd like. So there we are. So next we're going to use this yarn tail. We're going to use that to gather the middle and to sew the gathering a little bit, and then we'll make the chain around the outside. So I'm just going to feed this tail around my yarn needle here, just so we're ready to go. So when we're gathering here, I'm just going to make it so that the ends and the post stitches in the middle, they kind of sit close to each other. So we're going to gather them up, and I'm going to do that right where our seam is, where we were joining. So I'm just going to push the cluster V stitches down, and I'm going to gather together the outside edges with the post stitches in the middle. And remember, we're going to be covering this middle section with the chain here. So you can see in the larger size, I gathered together all the rows here in the middle. So we got the 2 post stitch rows in the middle, and then just the outside rows, I gathered all those ones up. So here I'm just gathering up the middle section a little, and you can make the gathering as tight or as loose as you want it to be. And now I'm just going to take my yarn needle with my yarn on it, and I'm just going to send it through that gathered section. So I'm just passing it all the way through those stitches there. And I'm just going to go across that a couple times here. And you might not want to pull it too tight until you're sure how tight you'd like that middle section to be. And this is also kind of like weaving in your end too, where you left off. And if you already cut that long yarn tail, you can always just use a separate strand of yarn for this too. Okay, so there we go. I'm happy with that gather in the middle there, so I'm just going to pass it through one more time, and then I'm going to just pass it underneath the stitches here just to secure it a little bit. And then I will cut the yarn. All right, so there's that little gathered section in the middle. I just pulled it in just a little bit. And now we're going to make a chain with our yarn long enough to go around the center. Now for the child size, I used about 15 chains here. A couple more, actually the same for the adult size since it was the same amount of rows. However, if you add another row of the cluster V stitches and the cross double crochets, you'll need to make a little bit of a larger starting chain. Just depends on how wide your ear warmer is. So this one I'm going to do about, I think, 11. We'll just check it out here. So I'm just going to make a slip knot with my yarn. And I'm just going to start with a chain 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I'm just going to see if that is long enough to go around the middle how I'd like it. And I'm going to I'll add one more chain because that was kind of tight. And then we're going to do a single crochet in each stitch across here, starting in the second chain from your hook. And then we'll fasten off when we get to the last chain. So here's my last one. And if yours is a little bit too long to go around, like if it's pretty loose to go around your ear warmer here in the middle, that's okay, because you can always sew it in a little bit on the other side. However, if it's too short, it'll be pulling a little bit too tight. So there we go. We can just double check that that works to go around, which it does. So we're just going to sew that right around the middle. So first I'm going to weave one of these ends in, since I only need one end to sew it together here. So I'll just thread my yarn onto my needle again. And we'll just gonna sew behind the single crochet stitches, just passing my yarn needle along just to pull this end in a little bit. And then I'll cut that end. And there we go. So now we have one end for sewing it around the ear warmer. So again, I'll feed the tail through my yarn needle here. So now for this part here, I'm just going to pass this around my ear warmer, and then I'm going to pass my yarn needle through the end of the chain in order to loop it together. So I just wrapped it around, and I'm just going through the end of the chain there. So we can see it's all together there, and then I'm just going to pull that through. And you can pull it as tight or as loose as you'd like it to be. And once you're around, you're just going to add a few more stitches around the back here, joining it together. So I'm just kind of passing my yarn needle across from one side to the other until that middle section has met in the middle there. The two ends have met. And then making sure that you like how that looks from the front side, I'm just going to pass my yarn needle through the ear warmer to hold the chain in place. And then I'll pass it back down through the stitches, because we don't want the chain to slide around. And then I'll do it one more time down here at the bottom. And just back down again. There we go. And then I'll just weave in this end back and forth a couple times here on the back. And then I'll just cut that little end. So there we go. There's the child size of this headband here. Or sorry, the toddler size. And because toddlers have smaller heads, smaller ears, you don't need it to be as wide to go around their head, to go over their ears. However, if you wanted to add that extra row on, you could have. So we got the toddler, the child, and the adult size here. So I hope you enjoyed this video tutorial to make the peekaboo ear warmer. You can also check out the peekaboo beanie and the peekaboo messy bun beanie, which are also on the blog, along with the written pattern for the ear warmer too. And I'd love it if you subscribe to this YouTube channel, liked this video, and followed Loops and Love Crochet on Facebook and on Instagram. Thanks for watching.